You'll see that come up.
Recording in progress. We're on.
All right. Well, welcome everyone. I'll do a more formal thing for the recording. Jim Burklow here from Zoe, and we're really pleased to have Michael Richardson with us. And I forget your name already, so sorry. Susanna from SKYLIGHT, which is an app with spiritual practices app for young people. And Michael and they're going to share with us info that they've gathered from research that they've done into the spiritual interests or lack thereof of young adults. And take it away from here. We'll be sharing this with our Zoe network, this recording of our campus ministries around the country. So thank you so much for your time and energy for this, and this will go out to others.
Yeah, thank you so much. And so glad that you're sharing the recording. I'm sure that we will want the recording as well. So if you could send it to us, that'd be amazing. You said it perfectly. We're here to just share some insights that we have at SKYLIGHT about young people. And hopefully it'll be something that you learn and is relevant in the work that you do. Feel free to use the chat if you have any questions throughout. And we'll do our best to answer them with our collective brains. So, oh, did you share the presentation?
Oh, I need to do that, don't I?
Yeah.
I need to share my screen. Pardon me.
Oh, yes. Done deal.
Right. Will you set me up for that, Jim?
Okay. Where was I here? Hold on. Make co-host. There we go. Does that work?
That works. Okay. Share my screen here. And we'll go to that point. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, there you go. Can you see that okay? Awesome. Okay. So we can go on to the next slide. So SKYLIGHT, if you don't know about the app or haven't used it yet, it's a completely free app that anyone can access, whether on your phone or on a website. We have over 500 spiritual exercises on there, and so far we have over 4 million people who have viewed an exercise or gone through an exercise. Our target audience right now is 18 to 35-year-olds. So you'll hear us referring to them as Gen Zennials, combining that Gen Z and young millennial generations. So our mission here is to help this group live happier lives through having a personal relationship with a higher power. And for us, a higher power, we don't define that for them. It's however they choose to define that. And so today we're really going to talk about our findings from SKYLIGHT and some insights that we have. And we're just happy to engage with you regarding, what we find over here at SKYLIGHT. So among some of the insights that we're going to share is why most of us are wrong about adult spirituality, what attracts them to a spiritual practice and why it's so easy to get it wrong, what spiritual practices they actually want to do, what keeps them coming back, or what we like to refer to as retention, and how to use the calendar and the clock to engage. So really looking at patterns. So we've all, this is me for you? Yeah. Okay. So you may have heard that Gen Z and millennials may not be very spiritual, may not be very religious, that they're really turning away from religion. That they're less likely to attend religious services. Attendance has been really low, and they don't really interact with a religious or spiritual community. And so really the question is, well, with these traditional, more formal spiritual structures missing from their lives, where do they find that deeper connection? And so at SKYLIGHT, our answer to this was simple. It's on their phones. And this isn't to say that SKYLIGHT is a replacement for these spiritual communities. In fact, we don't provide any kind of communal space, if you will. What we do provide is that initial spark or that interest or kind of a way in for them to start practicing and getting engaged. So we don't share a belief system or have any community component. However, we do offer a very open way for them to engage in spiritual practices. And so in order to really know how to engage them and keep them engaged, there were some things that we really needed to figure out first. Number one, we have to figure out how to attract them to a spiritual practice. So whether that's through ads, Google, or they're looking on their phones for apps to download. Then once they come to our app or our website, we then have to figure out, okay, what kind of practices are they interested in and are they willing to engage in? And once we figure that out, then we want to know, how do we keep them coming back, right? How do we retain them so that they keep wanting to do these practices and engaging with us? So because of this, we have a ton of data. Benefit of being an app is that we get a lot of live data on the active choices that they do, right? So what practices they want to do, what kinds of features that they like. And so we've tested a bunch of these and we'll share some of our insights from that. And I think that's what really makes us unique as well, because we use this data to inform how we use the app and change the app. So we're not just asking what they think or what they would do, we're watching them make these real life decisions, right? So like we may have more clicks on meditation versus yoga. However, we want to know also the why. Why is it that they would do one exercise over the other? And so that's what we also do is research, which is where I come in. And so we also do the why of doing panels, interviews, focus groups, surveys, what have you, to figure out why are they doing certain things, what is it that makes them engaged and motivated to keep coming back to a spiritual practice. And so really kind of getting that whole picture of not only what they're doing, but why they're doing it. And so because of this, we have testing plus research, and that means we learn a lot of really great stuff. And for example, right now we're running an ad test on what young adults prefer to call their higher power. And so here are options, higher power, God, the divine, transcendent. And this is really for us to know what is it that resonates with them the most, right? Especially given that young adults right now, they're really exploratory when it comes to spirituality and religion. So we kind of want to know what word is it going to likely spark them engaging with us.
So that's just a small example of some of the stuff that we've been testing right now. All these little nuancy sort of discoveries lead us to becoming more effective at sharing online. And hopefully these learnings, we think they really translate to real life as well, not just online, but in real communities. And so let's share what we've learned. We'll start with the biggest of all. So we learned that America's young adults are really a distinctly secular generation, that they have like deep anti-religious sentiment. They're apathetic and ambivalent about a higher power. And they lost the trust that their spirituality can help with life. So they sort of wander between different sources of help, whether it be science or pop culture. And this is what we thought until we realized that we were dead wrong. None of this is true, even though it's what we expected to find when we started SKYLIGHT a few years ago. But we tested out of this paradigm, and it's a popular paradigm for those in the faith world to think that that these young adults are sort of anti what we're offering. The real story about today's young adults is actually a story of spiritual revolutionaries. So we found that young adults today are actively dissolving the beliefs of yesterday, and they're adopting new beliefs that are foreign to their parents. They're creating new religious identities for themselves. They're trying to sort of make for themselves experiences that will unite them with all mankind, with the transcendent. And after our initial misstep, this became our new paradigm until we realized that this too was a big lie. We're very confident about the fact that we are not perfect. And this is one of the paradigms we fell into, is thinking that young adults were intentional revolutionaries in the spiritual realm. When in fact, the truth is, and this time I mean it, this is where we are now anyway, is that young adults are actually spiritually quite practical. Even if young adults don't attend religious services, most of them are still curious about religion and spirituality. Even more, they trust God to help them in key moments of their lives. And they do experiment with different kinds of practice, but they don't experiment because they want to revolutionize religion or spirituality, but just because they're looking for what works for them. So we call them spiritual on-demanders because it reflects a lot of the way that they consume media, just entertainment media. Where 20 years ago, to watch a show like Friends, you had to watch it on Thursday nights on NBC. It was destination appointment viewing, right? And now these young adults are watching some of the same shows we used to watch, but watching them on their own time, in bed, at 1 a.m. they're binging episodes of Friends, and then not watching it on Thursday nights, right? Watching it whenever they feel like it. And this is how they consume spirituality, we found, is when and where they want it and how they want it. And no one can tell them exactly how to do it. They have to figure it out themselves. So the takeaway here is that young adults, they want spirituality, but they want it on demand. And so I want to pause here and point out that these false paradigms, at least as far as we've found, are really problematic for those of us in the faith space. We're trying to engage in community because they keep us from addressing the real issues, the real needs of our young adults. And when we see them erroneously, we can't help them. So this is a quote from a SKYLIGHT user. This is something from Susanna's research. Please share.
Yeah, so I've talked to many of our users between that 18 to 35 age range, and one of them expressed that they've come to a place where they want a better and a real relationship with God, but on their own terms, right? So again, on that on-demand paradigm. And if you read on, then this person says, I feel like spirituality comes with something that's within, not just the external factors, but what's within you that can kind of bring out the light in those external factors. And so to give you context, they were talking about, it's not just about the going to church on Sundays and doing kind of these very ritualistic things that are built into the religion, but for them really finding that meaningful connection and relationship, and then doing it out of their own will and motivation rather than something that is essentially prescribed to them.
Yeah. So, I mean, I'm sure a lot of you are nodding your heads. I can't see you right now because I've minimized you, but this is probably what you're seeing. And we're seeing it in big ways in mass numbers online. So our question is then, knowing that this is an on-demand spiritual generation, how do we serve up on-demand spirituality? To get us there, we've adopted this cycle that we borrowed from some really smart researchers, that in this cycle, personal crisis leads to seeking, which then leads to practice. And our goal at SKYLIGHT was to help people move from place to place into the practicing realm, and then within that, sort of hold them there long enough to really make an impact and create a relationship between them and their higher power. So let's start with the crisis moment. We did some research back in 2023. We did a national survey on why Americans, well, what they pray for, how they practice spiritually, and we asked them why do you pray? And these are the top answers. Within this, if we look at the needs-based answers, we pull those out, we find that they really mirror mental health needs, anxiety, depression, feeling out of control, trauma, self-esteem, addiction. And in a separate survey, we also asked young adults which of their needs they would trust to a higher power, to God, which ones they didn't really think higher power could help with that much. And again, the top winners were anxiety, self-love, addiction, depression, loneliness. Interestingly, the ones that were more tangible pursuits like work or school or achieving goals are on the bottom of the list. So they really trust God to help with issues of the mind and the heart. And this is corroborated by what we're seeing on the SKYLIGHT app. So these are our top 5 doors into the spiritual practice. And the top 2 by far are sleep and anxiety. But sleep, anxiety, stress, loneliness, and self-esteem. I just want to take a moment to highlight each of these. I know that I'm talking to people who totally get this, but I just want to share this real quick. So sleep, of course, we know that young adults are struggling with sleep big time. 93% are losing sleep to social media, and they know it. They know that they're guilty of this, right? But it's hard to stop. The blue light is hurting their sleep. Their thoughts are racing. Anxiety is also contributing to their lack of sleep. Anxiety, we know that 1 in 2 struggle with anxiety, and 1 in 3 medicate for it. very anxious generation. Stress is huge, all kinds of different types of stress. Burnout is really huge with this generation going into the workforce. It's much higher than, like, way higher than what boomers ever experienced. 56% report feeling lonely at least 1 to 2 times a month. They feel lonely over twice the rate of boomers. And then social media and digital tech have just separated them from those support systems and the communities that they need to feel that connection. And then finally, self-esteem is no better, right? They suffer here more than any living generation, Gen Z does. Body image, social media, the comparison from that doesn't help, and perfectionism is high. So from all this, our takeaway here is that in order to connect with Gen Z and millennials, we really need to appeal to their acute needs. What I mean by acute is, what are they feeling right now? What do they know themselves that they need help with? And if you appeal to that, you will attract them. This is what we found. So if this is what young adults are asking for help with, what are they not asking for help with? This is where we failed. So these are the loser topics for us: gratitude, peace, patience, hope, love. These are great topics. And peace is the opposite of anxiety, right? So it should do really well. But we found that these topics didn't attract very many users at all, because users want to see their needs reflected in your messaging. They don't want to guess that maybe your love will help them with their self-esteem. They want to see that you're going to help with their self-esteem. That makes sense. We have to be very direct in order to attract them to our practices. We also found some interesting patterns with time with the calendar. So young adults' needs shift with the seasons. And this is a combination of data from our app, also search performance on Google and Google Trends. And it shows that summer is a down season for SKYLIGHT. Interestingly, we get a little summer vacation. Nobody wants to click on our app. That's wonderful. But then sleep problems arise in August, and they continue strong into the fall. Anxiety and stress, they peak post-Christmas, and then they bubble up again in April and May. In May, just in time for mental health month, right? And we assume this is due to job hunting and finals, but we're not conclusive on that yet. And it's one thing Susanna's researching right now is the why behind some of these timelines. So the takeaway here is to be seasonally relevant to their needs. And when we talk about seasonally relevant, sometimes in the faith world, we talk about religious holidays and, hey, it's Christmas time or it's Ramadan. But in this case, it's actually more about their mental health needs and being relevant to those. So think about that. How can we make our needs tailored to the season? So we move from the crisis stage into the seeking stage. Young adults are great at finding things online. They're expert searchers, way better than I will ever be. And so we've been in all these places trying to help them find spiritual practice. And we found a few things. First of all, we found that what didn't work. So we had our initial, back in the couple of years ago, our initial exercises have these great imaginative titles like Fear Coaster, Floating, right? And they promise these kind of big exploratory experiences, and nobody clicked on them. And then we realized, much to my chagrin as a creative person, that really they wanted something much more practical, like we said before. So we began to use titles like Short Prayer for Healing, Meditation for Depression, Music for Anxiety. Not super creative titles, but they did the job. People knew what they're looking what the need they have was being reflected, and how they're going to get that. And so we eventually tested into an equation or a formula here that includes the practice type, the problem, and a reference to the fact that it's going to be a spiritual practice. And this is what got people in the door for SKYLIGHT. We also learned to use 5th grade language, and we learned that the phrase "how to" is pretty powerful for people searching for our stuff. And so the takeaway here is to attract young adults, clear beats clever. They need to know, they don't have a lot of time. They have very short attention spans. They need to know that what you're offering is going to give them exactly what they need. Otherwise, they'll go search for something else. So we've gotten better at language, but then we had to work on our visuals. we tested some visuals a couple of years ago and found that young adults weren't too much into the spirituality being sort of gauzy and esoteric, nor were they into the idea that spirituality was gonna be a good time, was gonna be fun, rock and roll, baby. No, they wanted it to be really kind of bold and practical. Yeah, a little bit of style, but keep it grounded. The biggest shift we found with visuals is when we added people. Maybe this is obvious, but people are attracted to people. So we found that when people come to our app, the first exercise they choose almost always has a person on the cover. And so we've adapted our exercises to include real people on the covers, on the cover art, if you will. And so we realized that people attract better than brands and organizations. They might love Skylight and they might love the app, but they want to see a person more than they want to see a brand or a logo or or even an animation. So when we added these graphics together with the copy changes, with the type changes, and we had a clear basic language, and we reflected their needs in the title, we saw not just an increase in clicks, but an increase in time spent on the exercises. 50% more time on all of our exercises, just by making it clear what we were going to help with and who was going to help you with it. We also learned the hard way never to bait and switch. So it's kind of tempting sometimes to say like, hey, come and ease your anxiety, but not to say that there's a prayer involved. But then when there's a prayer involved, they get angry at you, right? I got bait and switched. So we just learned to say up front, prayer for anxiety, and people were all totally cool with it. So be upfront, never bait and switch. Bad idea. All right, so we've attracted them into maybe the app or the website. Now we're getting into practice. How do we produce practices that are going to be satisfying for them? This is the graveyard of all the many things we've tried to engage in spiritual content. We've tried to engage them in that just didn't work. So stories, classes, discussions, articles, poems, Q&As, journaling, and written curriculum. And we tried really hard to make journaling work, but it just couldn't work. So this isn't to say that these wouldn't work in other media or maybe on other apps, but on our app, none of these were accepted by young adults. What they did like was affirmations, prayer, meditation, movement, and music. And if we look at the list of these practices here versus the ones we just saw, I see a common takeaway, common denominator. And that is that they want help doing something right now to alleviate their need. So whereas journaling might have a long-term effect or maybe Q&As, they could learn something. They wanted relief from their problem right now. And so these practices they saw, if I can get a 3-minute or 5-minute meditation, I can feel better right now. That's what attracted our users. Interestingly, we have also some trends about how and when these different kinds of practices are consumed. So like I mentioned last year, we did a survey on spiritual practice. We found that spiritual practice is way more common in the morning and the evening hours. And we found this corroborated by our Skylight users. So 1/3 of our users, our survey respondents, told Susanna that they were looking for help with morning and evening spiritual routines. So we've done this. We've realized that in the mornings, they want help being inspired and motivated for the day ahead. And in the evening, they wanted help decompressing and getting sleepy. And so we've tuned exercises for those different morning and evening hours, and we've advertised them as such. And in doing so, and adjusting for time of day, which I think is really important takeaway here, adjusting the offerings we give to our young adult audiences by the time of day, we've really increased our usage of the app by 30%, just by offering different evening and morning routines. You want to talk about this quote you received?
So, to build on Michael's point about they like something quick, they like something now, I think that's really important because you're more likely to do something if it feels more accessible and efficient. And so with this person, they say they deal with anxiety and they're really big on meditation and affirmations. And so it was easy for them to integrate Skylight into their morning routine. And so I think that's really important is if we want to build something regular into their daily lives, How much of it is it a disturbance to what they already have in their routines? And so how do we really not squeeze our way in, but essentially get interwoven into their daily routine and the fabric of their, schedule?
Yeah. So actually, people returning for morning and evening routines was the number 2 reason for people returning to our app to re-engage. Like we said, retention. So what's the number 1 biggest factor in retention? Number 1 is people. So we have exercises that feature people and exercises that feature animations. And guess which ones are more popular? Yes, people. And not just people, but people want to see, our users want to see a familiar face. So young adults actually want to see somebody who's authentic, vulnerable, shows genuine emotion. Maybe a celebrity, but especially somebody who is really connected to the topic and really is emotionally engaged with the content. So when we've used celebrities who weren't that emotionally engaged, or seemed like they were kind of like 80% there, they didn't perform as well as nobodies who were really engaged. So the presenter being really there with the user and being really vulnerable is super important to a generation that knows fake because they make a lot of fake, right? They're experts at the selfie. And so they know when they see someone faking it. Interestingly, we said before that people come to our app for these needs, these acute emotional needs. We found that the return users come back for the person more for the need. So if they had an anxiety issue and they came and did an exercise with Jessica on anxiety, the next time they come back, if they see an exercise on anxiety by Sandra, they'll do an exercise about depression with Jessica because Jessica, right? They're attracted to the person that they were with before. So really that person is the key to retention more so than even the topic. So know that they return with the person more than the practice. Those personal connections are super important. I know this, again, isn't surprising maybe to someone who works in faith communities, but even online, people attract people. So that's number 1. And it's so important to us that we've actually changed our sort of equation of our titles to include the name of the presenter, because users come back looking for that same presenter again and again. So I've been talking to you for now, I don't know, 30, 25 minutes or something. And young adults would have been tuned out long ago. We found, even though we have exercises that range from 1 minute to actually half hour for some of the sleep meditations, 80% of our exercises of our exercises that are consumed by young adults fall within the 2 to 5 minute range. Especially when they're first timers. Our first timers way over prefer to do really short bite-sized exercises, and then they move on to maybe something longer, something more involved. We found this is true on our YouTube channel. We found it to be true on the SKYLIGHT app and in Baskin Robbins, right? Sampling it works. People take a little bit and then they want more. So if we want to engage our young adults in future exercises, create a sample size. What can we do to make everything that we're creating sample size for our young adult audience? Let's talk a little bit about prayer. Prayer is an interesting I don't know, form of exercise. It's the most common type of exercise in the United States, we found from our survey by far. Young adults aren't looking online for prayer, at least not to us, for prayers, but it's the most popular form of practice on SKYLIGHT. It's the most popular second exercise we have. The first ones, not so much. The second ones, yes. It's especially popular, though, with people who have more acute mental health needs. We found that people who had higher mental health scores wanted to pray more often. In our survey on spiritual practice, we found that the emotional outcome of prayer was most often calm, grateful, connected, humbled, optimistic, focused, loving, motivated. So all emotions that are really healthy to feel if you're having an emotional or a mental health, I won't say crisis, but a difficult time, right? And so we know that prayer is powerful, but it's clearly not our best first exercise. And so we've learned to consider other types of exercise like affirmations or music as an intro or a first exercise to get people into the place where they might want to pray. And so our takeaway from here is to consider prayer a step 2 spiritual practice after some of the more accessible, less intimidating ones. Do you want to share a little bit about how our audience views prayer?
Yeah, I think prayer feels very traditional. So in whatever faith practice, there's a form or a way that people typically pray. And so that's what they think of when they think of prayer. However, if you're doing something like affirmations, telling yourself, I am loved, I am beautiful, I am created beautifully, etc., those could also be a form of prayer. And our practice, our app provides prayers in a lot of different formats. And so, what I hear from our users is that, oh, I never thought that I could pray this way. There's different ways to pray that I never really thought about. And so it's really nice for them to really shift their perspective on prayer as well and try something new, maybe a little different from what they traditionally know as prayer.
Yeah. So again, we found that music and affirmations were really great entry points into prayer, and that prayer again became the most volume-wise, became the most popular spiritual practice we have. Just isn't the most popular first practice we have. Okay, so here's an interesting tidbit of information that we didn't know how to apply, but I think I'm getting a sense of it now. Last year in our spiritual practice survey, we asked people about objects they use when they pray. Okay, we were just trying to find out what the objects were and how popular they were. We weren't expecting to find this. So, if you get a 10% delta, 20% difference in a survey, that's big news. This is a 300% difference between Gen Z and millennials and Gen X and boomers as far as use of objects while they pray. And millennials and Gen Z are using objects at 3 times the rate of their predecessors. And this begs a question, why? Why is this happening? And this isn't just like things you consider more modern, but all the old school objects they're used in traditional big religions for prayer are all taking off in big ways. I was speaking with somebody recently who said that young adults really aren't into the church community and ritual anymore. And I said, well, I don't know about the community, but the ritual is alive and well, but it's happening in their homes. It's happening in their personal time, much more so than with previous generations. And so, so we know that spiritual practice works, and Skylight is further evidence that spiritual practice works even in an online environment. Want to talk a little bit about this?
Yeah, so last year we surveyed our users and looked specifically at the Gen Zennial age group. And we found that when they used the app more often, they also scored significantly lower on anxiety. And then we also saw that they had reduced stress and that they tended to sleep better. All that to say, we don't know that, we can't say that Skylight is the cause of that, right? But it does beg the question of like, oh, that's interesting. What role does Skylight play in their lives that they're having these better mental health outcomes? And then, there's other research or other tools that we can use. So Google has like this awesome feature where it tracks everything that you do and knows everything about your life.
So awesome.
So awesome,
Yeah,
right? One of the things that is useful for, apps like us is that it can tell you an estimate of your potential customer base. So I'm going to borrow an example that Michael has used in the past. If you're selling hot pink Barbie roller skates, Google will tell you when the demand for those roller skates may have passed its peak. And so right now, what we know is that spirituality, or our product being Skylight, there's a really, really big demand for it. People are wanting it. People are searching for it.
Not searching for Skylight per se, but searching for spiritual help with their acute needs, right? They're looking for God to help them in their moments of crisis.
Yeah.
And this is big news for all of us on this call, that even Google recognizes that there's a huge demand, and young adults are just waiting for somebody to come along and offer them the solution they're looking for. So in that quest, Skylight, well, our work isn't done, obviously. We're sharing with you what we know so far, but we're going to keep learning trying to dial in on what young adults are really looking for in terms of what they want from spirituality. And as we learn more, as Susanna continues to research, we want to keep sharing with you. So let's consider this round one of what we learned so far. I'm going to put on screen here a few of the insights from today. And I just want to share one more thing about Skylight is that because we are, we're putting exercises out there with different titles and different themes, and we're advertising it to young adults, and then we're seeing how they respond and whether they return. And then we're also following them up with surveys to see the why behind why they're doing this. Skylight becomes, for us, a really powerful research tool to learn about young adults. And we'd hope that you'd see us also as your research tool to learn about young adults. So if you have questions that you would like to test out in that app environment, if you have ideas about what might work for us, we'd love to hear it. We'd love to help you get smarter about how to reach out to young adults, because really we're on the same, we have a very similar mission. We just happen to be doing it in a digital environment. Anything else to add, Susanna?
I don't think so. Yeah, open to what you think and your feedback and any questions that you have.
All right. Thank you. So far, wow, great. Maybe some quick intros here with people who came on, just so you have an idea who's listening right this minute.
Hey y'all, sorry I'm late. Had a Zoom that went until 3:30, so I got here as soon as I could. But my name's Ben. I'm a pastor in Dearborn and Detroit with Altogether Campus Ministry, a Lutheran Episcopal campus ministry community.
A really creative one, by the way. Yeah, love following you guys, Ben. Stacy.
Yeah, so yeah, I'm sorry I was late too. I had we have kind of an open house on Wednesdays, and people were too interesting and sharing. It's that time of year where they're saying what's coming up next for them, and someone had got accepted to a program for next year, so we had to celebrate. But I just have to say I am so delighted to be on this call, and of how many of us, there are 7 of us on the call, that I know 2 people already. Ben and I have been colleagues for a long time, and Sandy and I, how far back? I'm not going to say how long ago we were in seminary together. It was a while ago. Yeah, and I'm the chaplain at Brent House, which is the Episcopal campus ministry at the University of Chicago. I have lots of thoughts, but I also missed the first half, so I don't want to.
We'll get to
be
Mike. Mike, introduce, please. Mike, yeah.
Yeah. Hello.
Hi.
Hi. How are you?
Good.
Yeah, it was breaking up a little bit. What? Sure, you can hear me okay? Good. Yeah. Again, also, like the others, came in late because another board meeting that went a little bit longer. But my name is Mike Birch. I'm the executive director of The Crossing, which is a multi-faith campus ministry at the University of Wisconsin-Madison. And I've been here a year, and we're trying a lot of different things with my coming on board. And I just ran across Zoe online and thought I'd pop in and see what you all are up to.
Great. Welcome.
I love Madison. I love Madison so much.
It's a great place. Yeah, I'm happy here so far. I moved here from California a year ago. So.
Oh, very cool.
Got it. All right, let's pepper these wonderful, kind people with questions. Stacy, you got a head full. Let's hear them.
Well, the thing so I came in right when you were talking about prayer as being this second tier thing. And I just wanted to affirm that just from my own experience, but I have some questions about it in general. So I've been taking a deep dive into Ignatian practices and trying to adapt the spiritual exercises for a group, an Episcopal group context. And part of that was because over the years, I have these conversations with students and they want to talk about prayer, but they feel like they missed the memo. Like everyone knows how to do it. And I somehow didn't learn, which actually was my own story for a long time. And I felt like I was faking it, imposter syndrome, the whole thing. And so so that's been interesting. And I discovered that when I started playing with this Ignatian stuff, I people would get excited if I told them it was about discernment, less excited when I told them it was about prayer. And even though you are warning us against bait and switch, I think it's God's bait and switch that people get excited about trying to figure out what God's call in their life is to be. And God's like, you can only get that if you start talking to me. You know, let's hang out, which is what God ultimately wants, right? So playing with that, and realizing that what I've been playing with folks is just saying, don't even worry if you pray, just pay attention and keep track of where you think God might be showing up. So this really helping people, because they're stuck. I think part of the reason people don't look for prayer first is they're afraid it's not going to work for them, or they're afraid they're going to do it wrong, or they're going to break something, or God's going to be mad that they find, knitting prayerful or whatever, so both this resonates, and I do wonder if some of that hesitance is about a concern of imposter syndrome.
I just want to point you, I think if you find it interesting, to our survey from last year, we launched on National Day of Prayer. You can find the results, or at least sort of graphics about the results, on prayerwrap.org. So prayer, WRAP.org, which is connected to the Skylight website. But some interesting thoughts there about what people pray for, why they pray. And I think what I've seen from that, and maybe if I look at it again, I'll see it differently, is that they really think they're supposed to pray just to ask for things, right? And so if they're not asking for something, what's the point? And anyway, I love that.
Which then leads, because I work with really heady people, leads to all sorts of tying themselves into knots about, divine providence and people who don't get what they pray for, and am I changing the course of history or physics or whatever. Yeah. And the head covering. I noticed that of the praying with things, I am seeing really left-leaning, progressive, even way further left than me, women who are really enjoying playing with head coverings, either as a Lenten practice, was playing with it in going to Eucharist, in solidarity with hijabi and Orthodox Jewish women. That was a surprise to me. Really? So I was interesting that was part of a whole phenomenon.
All the things,
Object, wow. I just want to say I got a lot out of this already. I'm so grateful for it, and we will definitely be pushing this info in our network because it's just really useful. And the thing about, again, like I've been for the last several years when I worked at USC, and still to this day I do this a couple times a year. I lead contemplative desert contemplatio retreats. I take students out to the Mojave Desert for a day, and we do the practices of the early church, the desert fathers and mothers. They eat it up. They're so excited by it because they're doing something. They're doing it, and I introduce it to them via teaching them mindfulness. We start with mindfulness practice, and that then go into contemplative Christianity from there. Amen. They want the hardcore stuff, and they are electrified to find out about this tradition. Nobody told them about it. Again, because it's about practice and not about dogma. And they got all the dogma, but they never got the practice. So, y'all are onto something here in a big way. Like really touching a nerve. Because every time I just can't get over the reaction I get to these retreats. It's amazing. Ben, what do you know?
Stacy and I were just a part of a retreat a couple of weeks back in Chicago with our students from the Episcopal Province 5, and we did a feedback form at the end, and some of the strongest feedback that we got was that worship was not, or, you know, our daily prayer, so praying the office throughout the day together was not really given priority at the retreat. Like we put much more effort, I think, into like the amenities, the topic of the retreat, all these other things. And really, like, what we've gotten back so far is from people who have said, like, I would have appreciated more emphasis or attention given to the daily office, praying the daily office together, and not necessarily just all the other flashier things that we were trying to attract people with.
Yeah,
It was interesting.
yeah,
Wow, thirst for ritual. It's real.
yeah, yeah. But just the point you're making here that they want to do it themselves. You know, give me a ritual that sure, I'll start out with some folks or with your app, but I want something I can do in the morning or in the evening myself. And yeah,
Well, and there's one student in particular who's one of Stacy's, and I'm gonna lean on him heavily, I think, for future retreats with Prop 5, because yeah, he wants to really contribute to that part of the life of our time together, and I would willingly take that.
I
That's
will
why
make sure.
that's where I have the biggest imposter syndrome, I think, as a Lutheran in an Episcopal world. Sometimes it's like, I'm like, how do I do this stuff like authentically? I've never done it before. And
It's all in the book.
yeah, it's all in the book, but I get confused. I don't know which page to turn to. Yeah.
Mike, how does this resonate with you? Mike, anything? He's kicking back. Sandy, response.
Yeah, I had a lot of the thoughts, the ideas that have been proven untrue, which is why data is so fabulous. But my experience of young people is with the objects, they like to light candles and set aside the space, and space is very important to them. And my experience also is that when I am helping people to pray because of that, imposter syndrome, like, I don't know how to pray. Do I say thee and thy, or what do I do? That praying with someone in just natural language is helpful. And I learned at a trauma retreat that that prayer, especially with another person, regulates your system, re-regulates your system. So if you are anxious, it's a physiological response. You calm down when you pray. So that's exciting to me. The whole thing is exciting. I'm ready to go to my church and who are many well-meaning 80 and 90-year-olds and say, guys, we got a whole new playground. Come with me.
Yeah, that's for me, it's the most exciting part of what first we saw it last year in our survey, our prayer, spiritual practice survey, and we saw it again in our SKYLIGHT data, is that young adults they're not spiritually dead. They're not spiritually wandering. They are engaged. They're not in the same spaces that they used to be, but they're engaged, and and this is anecdotal, so we need more research here, but I found a lot of them want community. They're just not sure about what comes with the community, right? So again, that's my anecdotal experience with some of the early research we did, just talking to users. But I think it's a beautiful, bright future as far as the spiritual world goes for young adults.
I agree. I also want to add another anecdotal and experiential thing, is that when you have service, when you're doing good for others, that feels like church for young adults.
See that.
They don't want to sit in a room and listen to me, for instance, yammer at them. They would like to be out doing something meaningful.
I think that's the latest from Pew and from Springtide is, people feel spiritual with, with family, with friends, but service is a big one.
Yep. Where are you
That was
guys?
one of the results from the prayer thing too. Young adults mostly pray for their loved ones, people who are sick, for others that they may not know that are in crisis. And so I think there really is big heart among these young people that they care for others and they really care about the world. They really care about the well-being of not just the people in their lives, but people that are distant from them.
Yeah, as a Gen Xer, I was depressed to see that. Well, actually, I guess I was happy, selfishly depressed that young adults are more likely to pray for someone in need than those of us who are Gen X and Boomers. So we're a little selfish in our prayers, I guess. Yeah. Sorry, Mike. I think you were going to say something. Oh, you're muted.
You're muted.
Sorry, I'd gotten kicked off and I just got back on, that's all. But no, I appreciate the conversation. I think most recently here, and this is a new position for me though, is a lot of discussion about small group prayer where people are from different traditions. So finding ways to create space that Jews and Muslims and Christians could pray in together is challenging. There's a lot of, and you learn a lot about the way people frame the sacred and engagement with the sacred when you try to create space that is mutually accommodating. It's, first of all, super hard to do that. I haven't even figured that out yet. But anyway, that's some of the conversation. We have a kind of multi-faith campus ministry, and so those questions are starting to percolate.
Right. So you guys at Skylight, where are you headed with Skylight? What's next, and how might we intersect as a campus ministry network with you?
It's a great question. Thanks for asking. So we have a couple things going on. One is bilingual. We have Spanish offerings starting up in June, I think. We're recording today. Actually, we're recording Spanish right now down the street from where we are. We're also so I think it's clear that we're doing more international with Spanish and English. But another thing we're attempting very shortly is adding a section within the app where people can explore. So our app is not about dogma. It's all about connecting with a higher power, connecting with God. And so we want to help people connect with God in according to different faith traditions. And how exactly to do this, we're not quite sure yet, but we want to provide opportunities for people to pray with a Muslim or pray with a Jew or with a Christian, right? Or even different denominations within, but to help people explore, I guess, to sort of demystify and lower the sort of anxiety level about religion, and create sort of safety there, just to open the options to them, because like we said, we don't create community, and so we want to introduce them to the communities that are out there in a way that feels inviting.
Got it. Well, talk to us about your progressive Christian part of that.
Great, we will do.
Yeah.
Love it. Like I said earlier, we're really just, I feel like weird saying we're like chaplains, but in a way we're like internet chaplains, right? We're offering some sort of spiritual engagement to people who are online. And so if we can learn from you and help you learn from us, I would ask two things. I'd ask, again, if there's any questions that we can help, queries that you have about young adults. Susanna is actually crafting surveys right now to ask audiences. We're doing research with some students at UPenn. We're doing research with Skylight users. If you have questions that you'd like to know about, like what are they thinking about spirituality and religion, we'd love to have your questions. But we'd also love to have your connections. We want to share what we've talked about today with as many people as possible. So if you know somebody, if you know a group or an individual who needs to hear this, of course we can share the recording here, but it's always helpful to do it one-on-one or in person, so we can ask questions and go back and forth. So if you have anybody you'd like us to reach out to, we'd love to have the invitation and opportunity to talk to them.
talk to these amazing people, poke me and I'll hook you up with them at UPenn.
Okay.
Awesome.
Really wonderful Zoe affiliate there. So
Fantastic. So we've done this workshop a few different ways. We've done it like this. We've done it sort of as a workshop where we have like materials to like go out, break out in groups and have discussions and come together and that kind of workshop. We've also done it like lunch and learns with classes, even with student groups who may be young adults and they want to see, oh, this is what you're seeing from us. Is also interesting. So groups that you think would be interested in and can learn from what we're offering today, we'd love to engage.
great. Well, our affiliates, we'll see if there's interest there from
Okay.
our campus ministries.
And
Wow.
welcome, and sorry we didn't get to talk.
Yeah. Anybody else before we end our hour here as promised? Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, Michael is. Thank you so much.
Thank
Really-
you. And Mike, I'm coming to Madison tomorrow, so let's do that.
Perfect.
All right. Yeah, let me know
Oh,
when you
wait, no,
come.
wait, hold on, wait. Spring, when does spring start in Madison? I forget. Yeah, then
June,
June.
June.
July.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you so much. And
Thank you all for
Thank you.
organizing this. It was really helpful.
thank you all. Take
Thanks,
care.
Stacy. Thank you, everybody. Bye.